people who were fans of a certain show or a certain book have ended up writing it. And what they want to do is to recreate the magic that that book had for them when they were at the age when they were most influenced by it. So it will end up being a kind of an incestuous process. They are trying to reproduce the things of yesteryear. So they're referring to stories that possibly happened before most of their current readership was born. And then you'll get another generation who are fans of them, and it will slowly, it's like inbreeding, it will slowly, at the end of it, after a couple of generations of that, you're going to have some pretty funny looking kids. You know, like we've got one big cyclops eye all squashed up around the side of their head or something. You know, it's not healthy. You need to have ideas and influences coming in from a wider world. You can't get insular about it. This was what I was noticing with the comic strips of the 1970s. Luckily, I had got other things to be doing in the 1970s. There was great music around. There was a social life. You know, like it was, and I was having to earn a living. And in the later 70s, I was married. I got a child on the way. That was the point. I was working for a subcontractor to the gas board, and I just thought, now I'm 25, I don't want to be filling out invoices for a gas board subcontractor when I'm 50. If I'm ever going to do what I said I was going to do what I told myself I was going to do, which is somehow support myself, or the writing or drawing, or I had a brief period where I thought I may be able to be a rock star or something like that, but no, that was a quickly shattered illusion, you know. But I thought, okay, yeah, I'm just going to leave work, I'm going to throw myself on the mercy of the social security system, such as it is, and really make a go at drawing or writing and supporting myself. So I handed in my notice, then I got a phone call from my then wife saying that she was pregnant, which put me in an unusual situation, because I thought, well, it would be mad to give up a dull but dependable job with a baby on the way. On the other hand, if I leave it till after the baby's born, and I've got those two big, hungry eyes looking up at me, disappointedly, no, I'm never going to have the guts to make a move like that. So I decided to take the suicidal option, and I went ahead with quitting work, and yeah, we were living up there on a sink estate. The baby was born. It probably wasn't until, for a couple of months, I really didn't do anything. Or rather I did, but I did impractical stuff. I decided, I'd seen the excellent early issues of 2000 AD, and I thought, oh, this is fantastic. This is, and you know, it had got strips by John Wagner, Pat Mills, who are both very, very funny people, who had been driven a bit mad by having to work on girls' comics for about a decade. I know that towards the end, John Wagner, who's a very good writer and a very mordant individual, he was writing a strip about the blind ballerina, and he was just getting really nasty towards the end of it. He'd have the blind ballerina's wicked uncle leading her into the fast lane of the M1, telling her that she was being taken out on stage to perform at the Albert Hall or something like that. Great. But he had started, him and Pat Mills, Kevin O'Neill, and all of that early crowd were turning out the kind of comics that they would want to read. And it was brilliant. They were comics that worked upon a couple of levels. You could read Judge Dredd, I suppose, and think, yes, he's a really good action hero. But John Wagner's script was just screaming, he's a fascist. You know, in every couple of panels. It was talking about law and order taken to a ridiculous extreme. It was a satire. And I thought, yeah, maybe I could actually do something that I'd enjoy for these people. So, after quitting work, I thought, yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw and write and letter a huge space opera that will be like an epic. I've already got the first 300 pages in my head. Now I'll sit down and I will draw them. Anyway, about 4 or 5 months later, I realised that I'd got 1 page inked, but not lettered, another page half inked, and a page of not very good pencils. And I thought, this is not going to work, is it? It's like, yes, I can sort of draw, but only if I get a long time to do it. These people who were working in the industry, people like Brian Boland, people like that, they were capable of much more beautiful work than I was ever going to be capable of, and they could do it a lot quicker than I could. Although perhaps in Brian Boland's case, not that much quicker. But he was very painstaking. But so I thought, right, this is not going to work. And I realised, I thought, why am I doing this? And I thought, I'm doing it because it isn't going to work. I'm doing this impossibly long science fiction script, which part of me knows I'm never going to finish. Because then I will always have the fond memory when I've gone back to work at the gas board subcontractors. I'll be able to think, when I'm approaching retirement in my 60s, I'll be able to think, well, I could have been like a great writer or a great artist, but I just didn't bother with that, but I could have been. I would still have had the dream, you know? Whereas, if I sent something in, if I finished something and sent it in, what if it got rejected? I'd be crushed. I wouldn't even have the dream anymore. What if they said, no, you're nowhere near as good as you think you are? And I didn't think I was very good. So that would have been crushing. And I thought, yeah, that's it. I'm frightened of actually putting myself to the test. And I thought, well, obviously, this is all down to me. There's nobody going to help me, and there's nobody trying to hinder me. So it's absolutely down to me. If I want to do this, I have to take responsibility for it and just do it. So I went out, I bought a couple of copies of the music papers. I noticed that Sounds, which was a music tabloid back in the day, that had got a couple of, that usually ran a couple of half-page strips, and it was currently running just one. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe there's a vacancy there. So I did 2 half-page strips, writing, drawing, and lettering. Not very well with any of those things, but I did at least have the sense to cover it in lots of tiny stippling, which if you can't draw, I would advise, yeah, do a lot of stippling instead, because it really impresses people and it's easy, and if you've got a sympathetic editor, they might think, he's going to be blind in a couple of years, we better give him the work while he's still sort of capable of reading the checks and sort of things like that. So, yeah, so I did 2 sample episodes of a strip about an alcoholic, deluded person who believes himself to be a film noir private eye. I sent them in, and we got a telegram back, because we didn't have a phone in those days, a telegram back that was saying, like the strips, stop, when can you start, stop. as telegrams used to say, you know, it'll be email these days, wouldn't it? But, yeah, I phoned them up. They said, yeah, the second one, there's some problems with it, but if you can redo that, then you've got a weekly strip. And this was fantastic. Eventually I realised that I only had delusions of adequacy as an artist. I still couldn't draw well enough or fast enough, but for a couple of years I was doing that strip in sound. That taught me an awful lot about meeting deadlines and also about telling a story. That even if it's every week, you're going to have a beginning, a middle and an ending, a sort of a punchline to finish the strip with. I was also doing a 5-panel gag strip in the local paper called Maxwell the Magic Cat, which taught me the same thing. It was only 5 panels, but every week you've got to introduce the strip to the reader, set up your situation and get to some sort of punchline or conclusion by the end of that limited space. So after a couple of years of this, I realised that I actually couldn't draw, or couldn't draw fast enough to ever make a living out of this. But I was still friends with Steve Moore, and he was still making a good living, or at least a decent living, out of writing the comics. So I asked him if maybe he'd have a look and give me some hints, tell me how you actually went about writing a comic strip, you know. And he explained it was fairly easy. You know, you put your panel description there, then you put the dialogue underneath that, then you move on to the next panel, you describe your panel, you put your dialogue under that, and so on. He read my first efforts at a script, which I think was a Judge Dredd script, and he tore it to pieces very instructively. He said, look, you've got far too many words in this panel. This panel is unnecessary, it doesn't tell the reader anything. You've got too many panels on a page here. And this was all great stuff. It was stuff that I needed to know. And eventually I managed to get some stories accepted by 2000 AD, Doctor Who Monthly. These were little backup strips, tiny short stories, but they were invaluable. If anybody here does seriously want to be a writer, I'd say start out with a short form, because it's not like a 300-page science fiction epic. Yeah, everybody's got one of them in their head, I'm sure, you know, but you're never going to do it. You're never going to do it. It's too big. You've got no idea what writing 300 pages of anything is like. Start out with something short. Start out with little short twist-ending future shocks or something like that, where you create the entire world, you set up your situation, you introduce all the characters, you bring it to a conclusion in 4 or 5 pages. Now, if you've been doing 5-panel strips, then to have 2 or 3 pages seems almost agoraphobic in the amount of room that you've suddenly got. But you just scale up your thinking. So I was doing the best I could with those future shocks. I thought, well, if I've got this opportunity, I ought to use these stories to say something. Yeah, all right, sometimes they were just a dopey joke or just an imaginative little bit of entertainment. But sometimes I'd be actually trying clumsily to say something. I remember there was a story called Grawps Bearing Gifts, which was basically about a load of really vulgar, unpleasant aliens who arrive on Earth. They're all like wearing Bermuda shorts and like really tacky shirts and things like that, and they're loaded with money, and they go around buying up national monuments for these, their currency, which is huge gold bars. And at the end of the story, they've given so much gold to Earth that gold is now worthless. All of Earth's economies have collapsed. These aliens, the Grawps, have taken over, and it says that, oh yeah, and they've like redesigned